All right, just restarted the recording. Again, welcome everybody. Good to have you here. Eli Sagor here. I am an extension specialist with the University of Minnesota and the manager of the Sustainable Forest Education Cooperative. And this is a fun day for me. Lane, Moser, and I. Lane's going to do more talking today, or at least coordinating more of the event, more of the webinar. But we're going to be talking, as we do every time to time, about where SFEC is going through, in this case, I guess we wrote 2030. And we're going to present to you some things that we have planned. I'll do that kind of quickly at the beginning and certainly would welcome any feedback or questions about that. But we're going to spend most of our time talking a little bit about trying to get feedback from you about our direction through 2030. So Lane's going to present the results of a needs assessment study, and at least those of you watching live, we're going to be looking for you we'll go into breakout rooms, which we don't always do for our webinars, to get some conversations going, to give us some feedback about our needs assessment results. So as always, we would welcome you to post questions in the chat anytime. We'll take questions kind of on the fly, and you know, I'm happy to be interrupted or to clarify anything that I present and so on. But let's get into it. So what to expect? I'll talk just very briefly. I think you all know a bit about SFEC, but I'll talk a bit about our mission and our membership, briefly about previous needs assessments, and then I'll hand the screen to Lane. Lane is going to present the results for our 2022 needs assessment. Some of you may have completed a questionnaire related to that. Then we'll go into breakouts. We want to, as I said, hear from you about what we should do in 2024 and beyond, and we'll come back together to kind of discuss those as a group. So if you got a magnifying glass or a really big screen,
Eli, do you want to share your screen real quick?
Oh my goodness. It's my first time using Zoom. I'm sorry. Thanks, Lane. Oh my goodness.
Well, we did our tech check and then you stopped sharing for the intro. So
right.
Back and forth.
Sorry, everybody. And I guess I don't, maybe people were chatting about that. I don't have my chat visible. Sorry. That's great. Okay, so now you actually have a chance to see what's on the screen. But we are a University of Minnesota-based education cooperative. We're the only one in the country, the University of Minnesota, along with all of these organizations that you see listed here, support SFEC and enable us to bring you the kinds of events that we do. It's really wonderful. I think I have kind of one of the best jobs in the sort of land grant extension forestry world. Honestly, it's really great to be at the center of all of these organizations and able to do this work. What do we do? All of you who are on today, at least I think, have been to an SFEC event or more. This, you know, basically what we do is captured by this photo. We go out in the woods, we talk to people, we identify issues, and we really try to bring everyone together. There's no speaker at a podium at this event. There is at some of our events, but we really try to bring people together to exchange information much more than kind of just passively absorb information from a speaker. And we've always felt, and you see this in offerings like the Great Lakes Silviculture Library, but we've always felt that there's wisdom and knowledge among both learners and presenters, and that we've always relied on participants to do a lot of the presentation and idea sharing as well. So we try to bring different kinds of people to get together to talk about practical issues and solutions. Our typical offerings, again, you're probably familiar with some of these: ecological silviculture short course, forestry and wildlife research and practice review. We do a lot of topical workshops. You'll see a few listed, I think, on my next slide, about just addressing various things: leave trees, inventory, forest management guidelines, forest health topics, and so on. We offer webinars. We offer the Great Lakes Silviculture Library, which again exists to give practitioners like all of you a place that you can share stories and results of the experiments that you might be doing in the woods. Coming up in 2023 and 2024, you'll see all of these listed on our, actually not EcoSilv, I guess we don't have that on our calendar yet, but all the rest of these are listed on our calendar on our website. But coming up just in a couple of weeks, August 22nd and 23rd, Mike Demchik will be here from Wisconsin doing a session on timber marking for wildlife and for neotropical birds. Those are two different one-day workshops. Peter Deeser will also be on hand. Those are, I think, really going to be outstanding workshops. Silviculture for northern long-eared bat, September 6th. We've got a hybrid online and in-person forest inventory field skills session. Forest management guidelines, that one is full, unfortunately. So if you haven't registered yet, that's just a pilot offering. We're getting back to our full day-long kind of comprehensive forest management guidelines trainings. And we will be offering those in the coming years once we get the kinks out with this pilot. Climate adaptation workshop, forest and wildlife research review, of course, in the winter, and then ecological silviculture course returning in 2024. There's been a hiatus there with staffing changes at DNR and other things, and we're looking forward to bringing that back. How we assess member needs, there's a lot listed here. We meet every year with our executive and educational advisory committees. These are SFEC committees. We get input from the individuals who represent each of your organizations. There are several consulting foresters on. You're represented by John Carlson at DNR. Organizations research and practice priority reports. So the Minnesota Forest Resources Council and many other organizations publish these reports about priorities, and we pay attention to those. Post-event feedback forms. We do read those forms. We ask you to complete after every workshop. And we really rely, I put it in bold because we really are happy to get emails and have conversations with all of you about needs. We look at silviculture library case studies. What are people telling us are the issues that they're struggling with or dealing with? We look at emerging research published by faculty down here in St. Paul. We look at needs assessments, obviously, which is the topic of today. So we look at a variety of different things. We try to put these together. We talk to people like all of you, and we try to use that to inform our program delivery plans. And all of that brings us to our current needs assessment. And what we're going to do today, we really want you all through this breakout room process to help us interpret the results that Lane's about to share and add detail to what we think we've learned from this questionnaire. And with that, I'm going to step aside. Lane, I'll remember to stop sharing. And you can go ahead and share your screen and take over from here. That looks great.
Great. Thanks, Eli. As Eli said, my name is Lane Moser. I'm an education specialist with the Sustainable Forest Education Cooperative. And for about the next 20 minutes or so, I'll be going over our needs assessment. And this is what's on tap here for my portion of the webinar. So we'll touch on the methods just briefly before I dive into the results and what we think they mean. So there are a few steps that go into the implementation of this needs assessment. First, we conducted a literature review of research needs from a variety of organizations, such as state departments of natural resources, the Nature Conservancy, etc. And Eli has already just touched on that. Now, next, we distributed a survey. During the distribution of the survey, we asked SFEC member representatives to fill out the survey on behalf of resource managers at their organization. So the goal of this approach was to broadly aggregate needs and define trends at the organizational level prior to a more focused analysis on individual topics within a theme during the upcoming focus groups stage of our data collection. We also hope that this targeted response or targeted approach would lead to a higher response rate, giving us more actionable information on content needs, without having a prohibitively long or complex survey, which typically are associated with lower response rates. And so this is where we're at right now. As I said, our next step is to implement focus groups and reach out to our members to make sure our interpretation of the results lines up with the manager's intent. So we put our different member organizations in bins, stratifying them by their organization category from county to university. Now, these different categories are mostly self-explanatory. I'll note here that our state responses included both Minnesota and Wisconsin, and our university responses included both University of Minnesota entities as well as Minnesota North College campuses. We first asked individuals to, again, on behalf of managers at their organization, indicate their level of interest in 7 forestry themes. The available options were not interested, somewhat interested, or very interested. And if they didn't select very interested for a theme, that thread ended. If they did select very interested for a certain theme, then they were then prompted to answer further questions, including ranking a selection of topics from highest to lowest priority, including an option to write in additional topics. And next, we asked them to select the 2 most preferred formats for learning the content from a list of formats we provided, such as single day workshop, field day, webinar, etc. Now, let's unpack these results. Again, it's important to note that we asked 1 individual from each organization. And as I mentioned, that led us to a pretty high response rate for a survey of 72%. But that also means, for example, that a response from the Division of Forestry representing several hundred employees in these graphs has the same weight as someone from a county who may only have a handful of foresters on staff. Our key takeaways from the survey are that foresters are being asked to manage lands with increasing complexity to accommodate a range of landowner goals and societal values. That silviculture, forest health, and wildlife will continue to be a core focus for educational content across all organization types and ownerships in our member base. And that despite improvements in technological literacy and capabilities that we saw in the pandemic, we unequivocally need to be in person and in the woods. We don't have any sharing screen gaffes in the woods. It's just much more organic and engaging for folks. All right, so we're going to dive into these graphs now, and I appreciate that these are really busy. Just stick with me and we'll get through it. So this is called the Sankey diagram, and their purpose is to show kind of a flow of responses. I'm assuming folks can see my mouse here. They can show a flow of responses from one category to the next. On the left, these are organized in descending order from most responses to least for our survey for the silviculture theme. So all of the folks here said that they were very interested in silviculture, which is great. It's the biggest topic. It's the center of the universe, of the forestry universe at least. And it's great to see so much interest. These bins are sized relative to the number of respondents. So we got our most responses from the county folks, fewer from the SWCDs and private, and so on. On the right, we have a selection of topics within the silviculture theme that we asked the respondents to rank. One of the things that I have kind of figured out is the best way to interpret this is to simply follow one line at a time. Again, if we just look kind of in the dead center here, we just I get confused. So just try to follow one line at a time because each line is weighted relative to the other lines in the bin. So for example, if we look at a county, our county respondents, following this thinnest line, they are not as interested in fire as a silvicultural tool as they are in production-oriented silviculture or ECS silviculture. Similarly, if we look at the state example, we look at their thickest line, fire as a silvicultural tool, and then compared to forest management to benefit wildlife, etc. Now, with that orientation, ECS silviculture and forest management for wildlife are ranked as kind of a 1A and 1B. This is great to see. As Eli mentioned, our ECS silviculture cohort course will return in 2024. And this also aligns with other parts of the survey that show educational content relating to wildlife remain a priority for foresters. We did have 2 write-in options, which are not shown on the diagram. One of these questions was managing for the following species or forest communities, and the other was other, please specify. Now, in the former case, the most common tree species mentioned by our respondents were oak and tamarack, and the most common communities were northern and central hardwoods, lowland forests, both ash and our lowland conifer systems, and fire adapted. Now, 2 of these write-in options were highly ranked. One state respondent listed irregular silviculture systems and forest carbon, And one county respondent listed forest restoration and regeneration programs and methods. Now, our takeaways from the silviculture portion of the survey are that educational content related to fire is a priority among our Indigenous, state, and federal members, and that foresters need more tools in their silvicultural toolbox, whether they're dealing with the compositional and structural complexity of northern and central hardwood stands, or the operational complexity associated with lowland forest or fire-adapted systems. Now, among our timber topics, again, looking at the organizations in most to least respondents, listing that they were very interested in the timber theme, and then descending order of topics here. Among our timber topics, protecting site quality, road construction and maintenance, and field-based overview of FMGs were the three most popular topics with the lowest range in rankings among respondents. But as we can see by this graph, which is somehow even busier than the last one, everything else was a bit of a crapshoot. Just looking at how busy this diagram is shows us that beyond some trends related to a topic's popularity, we're going to need to have a more focused local approach to these topics, as different areas have different constraints and educational needs when it comes to timber. There are still some ways that we can tease apart this cluster of lines, however. So while protecting site quality was the most popular topic, with 4 organizations out of, I believe, 12 or 13, ranking it as their top priority, 3 organizations placed timber sale administration as their top priority with this theme. Similarly, one county representative ranked their written response of timber sale development and planning, especially planning infrastructure and erosion control, as the top priority. And this tells us that sale preparation and administration are real needs across a variety of organizations, which tracks with our perception of a transition from the previous generation of foresters retiring and a new cohort of foresters filling their boots. For our forest carbon theme, it followed some similar trends. So while silviculture and forest carbon sequestration and storage, as well as status and changes to carbon markets, were tied for the highest ranking, let's take a moment to just look through some of these lines. There's really not any major trends within an organization as denoted by the relative weight of these lines. Now, our county respondents highly prioritize content related to the public landowner sale of carbon offsets, perhaps predictably, but the other 4 options aren't really clearly favored among the counties. Our takeaways from the carbon theme is that we're going to need a wide variety of offerings for specific audiences, given the nuance and uncertainty surrounding forest carbon management implications on the landscape. There's just so much to unpack with this topic. I mean, startups are offering contracts between 1 year and 100 years to landowners. There's no one clear accounting methodology. There's a lack of consensus on if and how to factor in carbon storage in wood products. And state and federal entities in Minnesota are largely sitting out right now because to enter the carbon market at this stage could be viewed as endorsing a specific carbon accounting methodology. In any case, the preferred format for this theme was tied between workshops and webinars. Our delivery of forest carbon content is going to require a concerted and dynamic delivery to ensure we reach our members and then keep them up to date as the market shift and new information and policies are released. Our wildlife theme told us a lot about management priorities even before we read the responses. While 11 respondents, or about 33%, were very interested, only 3 were not interested. That is to say, 91% of our respondents were at least somewhat interested in the forest wildlife theme, which is the second highest level behind silviculture. And this may not be surprising, though. Right? Wildlife considerations are woven into all levels of forestry, from the prescriptions to the harvest to interactions with the public. So here's a word cloud of all of the write-in responses for the wildlife theme. Overall, we see an emphasis on forest bat species such as northern long-eared bat, moose, and then quite a few early successional birds, or birds that enjoy early successional habitat. This does seem also like a good time to plug our 6th September workshop in Western Carleton County, focusing on silviculture for northern long-eared bat. So with the number of write-in options for the wildlife theme, I didn't make a Sankey diagram, but instead here's the table of questions and their respective rankings. So all these rankings are out of 6. We can see here that game wildlife species has the highest arithmetic mean, and the write-in options for these endangered and threatened species were also quite high with a median of 6. Again, they were ranked 1 out of 6. Oh, and there's my lines for them. As one might expect in tree ranges and composition, as one might expect, changes in tree ranges and composition was far and away the highest ranked option for our climate change theme of the survey. And 4 respondents ranked it as their highest priority. An equal number of respondents rated the adaptive silviculture for climate change framework as a top priority, however, even though the latter did have a lower average ranking, as denoted down here. Now, these 2 topics being ranked relatively highly emphasizes the importance, again, of equipping foresters with the tools they need to ensure that cohorts that are regenerating in the short term will be set up for success in the next cutting cycle, when northern Minnesota's climate looks closer to Iowa's. SWCDs and our state partners were well represented in this group, with 75% and 100% of members responding, respectively. Now, what we didn't expect was that interest would be low relative to the other topics. Only 33% of respondents were very interested. That was tied for the lowest. And this theme had the second highest amount of organizations that were, quote, not interested. So climate change is going to affect each organization differently. So it could be that some areas may have a species mix that is more susceptible to climate change effects than others. To that end, it makes sense that some organizations would not be interested in attending an event on climate change, particularly if they feel they're already incorporating climate resilient strategies, climate projections, or other data into their prescriptions. At any rate, this is a theme that we need to unpack further. SFEC's content is locally relevant, and that will be especially important here to accommodate the range of needs across organizations, but we do need further context for this theme to fully implement our offerings. The adaptive silviculture for climate change framework is another topic that wasn't broadly prioritized, but highly ranked by those that did select it. This has a robust network of scientists and content behind it that can provide support for managers. Oh, and would you look at the time? It's, again, time to plug some of our upcoming events. A webinar covering the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission Climate Vulnerability Assessment on November 14th. And our Climate Adaptation Symposium on Wednesday, November 29th. Now, moving on to forest health, nearly half of all respondents were very interested in our forest health threats theme. Interest as a whole was second only to silviculture, and only 1 respondent was not interested. The highest ranked choice was silviculture options to mitigate insect and disease and other threats, with an average ranking of 4.8 out of 6 and a median of 5. Insect impacts and tree and forest diseases were nearly tied for the second highest priority. While integrating forest health monitoring into forest inventories was the lowest priority by far, 3 respondents ranked it as their number 2 priority. So this theme had the highest support for webinar, online, or hybrid approaches. And this makes sense. Foresters may just need guidance for certain forest health threats, which can be conveyed concisely through a webinar or remotely prior to or instead of attending a field tour. But this isn't a solution for all forest health threats, though. So again, we will need to tailor content and resources on a finer scale to ensure we're delivering the most relevant content. In doing so, we're going to need to leverage existing resources and relationships, whether it's through workshops or webinars organized with the Minnesota DNR's Forest Health Team or University of Minnesota Extension specialists, or through case studies on the Great Lakes Silviculture Library. In the latest version of the Silviculture Library, site visitors can filter case studies by even more forest health threats, and that's what this screenshot here is from. This is going to be a key part of disseminating treatment options for a given threat, regardless of how successful or not the treatments were in dealing with a given threat, and to drive future in-person events by potentially using case studies as the foundation for demonstrating treatments in the field. We are always looking for more case studies, and I'd love to work with you all to get more cases on the library. Our last theme is economics, policy, and human dimensions. As one might expect, our timber and wood products markets topic was the highest priority, but interestingly, conflict management was a priority among county respondents for this question, who ranked it at 5.3 on average out of 6, compared to every other respondent who gave it an average ranking of 2.7. Our write-in options had a similar sentiment. One respondent wrote in, "How do we as professionals communicate forest management principles at the local, regional, and national public discussion?" Oops, and there's the graph there. And that theme of communication is really a key takeaway for this theme. We are going to continue to work with the university and other partners to untangle some of the implications and advances in wood product markets. It's vital. It's how we can get management done in these forest stands. At the same time, however, more and more members of the public are looking at trees and afforestation as a climate solution, and rightfully so, but they're missing out on that vital middle step that is active management. And we're seeing that communication and conflict management are the soft skills that also have a spot in a forester's toolbox, and those are pieces that we can weave into all of our field tours and other offerings. Again, plugging our fall 2023. Originally, the Timber Management and Taxation School was scheduled for July, tentatively rescheduled for fall 2023. We're working on nailing down that date. And now y'all. So I think we might not have enough participants for 4 groups, but we will assign you to breakout rooms, and we'll share a document for you to take notes. You can nominate a recorder. They can either volunteer or be voluntold to take notes on this topic and discuss it in breakout rooms.